Hi everybody, I'm Jamie.
I'm Fuchsia, and we are
The thing,
called
inclusion.
Inclusion. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the podcast. So, Future, our second podcast. How you feeling?
I'm super excited. I can't wait for our journey. It's just amazing.
Supercalifragistic, something docious. Can't even say it, but I did try.
Goodness, that's a lot of cognitive reasoning right there.
So, to anybody who is just joining us, thank you for joining our podcast series, That Thing Called Inclusion. We have done one episode of this prior to today, and you will notice we are still quite new at this, so we may make up words as we go along, as I just do. So please do bear with us. And also, just to let you know, this podcast is not for anyone below the age of 16. Not that we're going to be heavy on adult content, it's just we may use the occasional swear word. I am Northern Irish, so that cannot be helped. So, Fuchsia, tell us then, how has your week been?
Well, in all honesty, it's been a pretty awful week with my disability. Unfortunately, I was in hospital on Saturday. Now, I have a genetic condition called EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, which I think we touched on in the first episode. And when my body is under a lot of stress and it's not particularly happy, my organs start playing up. I'm not certainly shutting down, but they do have an issue. So what happened was I went into full urinary retention on Saturday, which then put a lot of pressure onto my spine and it caused my legs to go numb. Now, this is not unusual for me, but the only way it can be treated is in hospital, because I think if you can imagine, if you're trying to self-catheterize, sorry if we're going into medical terms here, it's incredibly difficult for someone with a spinal injury to be able to do that. I won't go into the wheres and wherefores of how to do it, but it's incredibly difficult. So I did have to go into hospital and I did have to get released, and I'm on a lot of pain medication. So if I do not make sense during this podcast, or I zone out for a little bit, or I'm a little bit hyper, that's why. It's not illicit substances. I'm actually on incredibly strong painkillers. So, but I wanted to be full and honest, because this is what it's like to be a disabled person. Sometimes you see the brighter side of disability, like we're coping and we're superheroes and oh my god, we're amazing, but actually there is another side, which is an incredible amount of pain, an incredible amount of discomfort, and sometimes a lot of mental struggles with having to deal with that. Now, I haven't actually been to work since last Tuesday because of this, so for me that's an added extra pressure. So it's been a bit of a struggle.
Of
Straight in off
course, it
the bat.
has.
Good morning.
But by the side of it, you have had, and like I've been in contact with you the past week, and you've been through this up and down journey. And I think the thing that sticks in my head when I'm texting is, oh, I need to get back to work, or I've letting this down, or I'm doing that. And it's that almost that fear. We've kind of touched on this in private conversation, but for anyone who doesn't know, I think when you have a disability and you're used to kind of not being in employment, or you're having issues in employment and you have to be off sick, you have this almost this safeguard up where, and this little mind block that tells you you're going to get sacked, you're going to get sacked. You've taken all this time to get adjustments and you're not doing your job, and you know what, there's somebody with non-disability who can do this better than you. And it's frustrating because as much as we kind of shake ourselves, and I've kind of told you to do it all week, but we can't shake that feeling of not being good enough when we're out of work, because you just have that fear of your previous experience. And I think the physical pain, we can see when somebody's physically in pain. You can see them, we have bandages and all for physical. Do you know what I mean? You can tell somebody's in physical pain, but the pain that you can't see is that emotional scarring and that previous scarring from those instances. So I think for me, talking about this week, especially in regards to pain, is I've been very clumsy this week, I'll not lie. I've walked into things, I've banged into things. I haven't had half a week of you with experiences you face. So I want to ask you, these experiences of these visits to hospital, and you're used to these by now. How do you get used to that? And when did this start happening to yourself that you started having to go into hospital to get this support?
So it's happened in the last 10 years. When it first started, I probably was in hospital once a week. I actually spent a full month in hospital.
Oh, wow.
Um, doing a lot of investigations, MRIs, CT scans, just to make sure that there was nothing nefarious going on. Because the way my body presents, it does actually present as having tumours and cancers, because there's no discernible reason why I should be having these problems, because the blood work's
Yeah.
coming back fine, the dip test from the urine is coming back fine, so I don't have any urine tract infections, which would be the biggest marker for going into retention. So at the very start, it was awful. I felt so bad because when I was a child, I had a history of going in and out of hospital, and it was quite traumatic. I would lose weeks, months of schooling, going in and out, and things weren't quite right, and I wasn't okay. So as an adult, you just try and think, right, I'm just going to just crack on with life, not realizing that you're actually very, very unwell and that you just can't keep going on. And going back to what you were saying, I mean, all this week I've been going, oh, I need to go back to work and I need to do this, and I'm letting people down, where actually I will let people down more if I don't have that time off. And even I
Yeah.
said, didn't I, that people would have a week off sick for the cold, like the common cold, and a disabled person would be like, oh, my organs are shutting down, I'm just going to go into work, it's fine. Because like you say, we're so scared of being sacked. Now, I've had quite a lot of traumatic experiences with hospital.
Hmm.
um, they don't treat disabled people quite right. Maybe it's a fear of disability, or they just don't know how to make things better. So honestly, the onus is onto the disabled person. There's been several occasions when my wheelchair hasn't been with me at hospital, and then they're like, "Oh, you need to get home," and I'm like, "Well, how can I get home? I don't have my wheelchair. It's not as if I can just walk to a taxi," and various different
And
things.
that's happened quite recently to you as well,
Yeah,
because that instance you're talking about, that's happened really recently, and it was when we kind of had started, like me and Future's known each other now a few months, and we've been building this great friendship. And over that time, I think for me, because I have a visual impairment, I don't require a wheelchair. I have terrible mobility, but I have, kind of that independent mobility where I can walk out without a crutch, or I can walk out without a guide dog. I'm quite, I think it's more of an adamant of that I'm confident and I can do this kind of attitude. But I haven't had those experiences. So when we've been relaying messages back and forth, and that instance where you were in the hospital bed and you were texting me going, I don't know how I'm getting home. And it's like, well, how did you get there? Like, if you've drove there, surely you can drive yourself back home. But then it's like, wait a second, why would you have to drive yourself back home if you've literally been in hospital? And then it was like, okay, so you haven't drove there. How did you get there? An ambulance. But they didn't have one to send you home.
yeah.
Like, so, like in those cases, is that something, because you've talked about the hospitals? Is that something that you've noticed a lot with hospitals, or is it only so many times that you've noticed it, or is it certain
It's certain
triggers?
hospitals. The one that I was just in on Saturday, they took my wheelchair with me, which was amazing. I was in a private room, which was great. The doctor was there right away. They didn't know what was going on, but they were very open and honest with conversations. They asked me, they said, "You're an expert with your body. Tell me what's going on." And I told them. And that was amazing. I'd never had that in another hospital,
Yeah.
which is to the south of my county. They completely disregarded my pain, everything. This hospital, pain medication within and literally an hour of me turning up, bladder scans, helping me go to the loo, making sure that I had an IV drip, not a UV drip.
I was going to say you glow in the dark.
Sunshine. We all need sunshine. An IV drip, an IV paracetamol, just everything to try and make sure that my back unlocks. And it was a totally different experience to what I had
Mhm.
previously. But on the flip side to that, Jamie, because obviously I don't have a visual impairment, I wear glasses, but that's totally different. Um, have you ever been in a hospital or a doctor situation where someone has handed you something to say, read this, and you've been on your own? You're like, excuse me, can't bloody read that. Can you help me? Have you ever been in that situation?
Oh, all the time. When you go into doctors, it used to be you went into doctors and you went to the desk and said, "Hi, I'm here for an appointment at such and such," and they'd be, "Go sit down." And then they would have this little Do the little strip on the wall that has the writing that comes across that'll have your name in
Oh
it?
God, yes.
No, like, how am I saying that? So I would sit there oblivious, and it would roll 5 minutes, 10 minutes after appointment, and I'd have no clue. And then things kind of changed where, and this is only the past 10 years since like this have actually changed. Things then came to the point where as you came in and you had a like a self checkout almost. I know that's a test like a shopping thing, but it's like a self check in, we'll say. And you come in and you check yourself in again. Okay, how am I doing that? So I would still go to the desk and say, "Oh, I need to check myself in," but I'd be told, "Oh, you need to do it in this machine." Also, hello to Future's cat just walking past.
Yes,
I
sorry,
swear,
cats will be involved.
I swear, sometimes I think it's my nystagmus, it's my eye going for a walk, and then I write, no, Fuchsia has actual cats there, it's not your eyes. But back to the doctors. So yeah, I've had problems when trying to speak to them to get and even getting that appointment. But to be honest, I find a good doctors in Belfast where I'm based, and they're really great at shouting out your appointments. What they're not so great at pointing out is if you ask them for a letter, and a perfect example would be I've asked for letters for employment around my disability because employers need some kind of medical proof at times, and I think me coming in almost licking my phone isn't enough for them.
Yeah.
But I've went and requested that evidence, and even getting that evidence, that letter is in like the tiniest, tiniest, tiniest font, and I'm like, great, I have a letter about myself, and I can't read it. So it's almost like, here, take this. I don't know if it does say about my disability. So yeah, I've experienced that, and I'm gonna be honest. A lot of the times, the doctors, for me, I go to them because of my back pain. Because no matter what way I sit, even today, you can see I kind of slouch. Like I'm like the Hunchback in Notre Dame, only with dark hair. I think he had red hair, didn't he? Um, so I think for me, I get pain from the way I sit, and the doctors always said, no matter what you do, you're always going to get that. You shouldn't be working on computers. Well, I'm not going to be a bricklayer because the house would be wonky.
Could you imagine the
So,
wall that you would build? Oh my goodness.
or could you imagine? Or me being like coming out to do your painting in your house. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to paint and help my partner paint our house, but the cutting in, like, there's no cutting in. The limit doesn't exist. It's all one color. So, like, nobody wants their whole room green everywhere. You want a white ceiling. So it's difficult because I went through situations without adjustments or without support from employers, and there was one point I was taking like 27 tablets a day for pain relief, and
Mm,
that's insane.
yeah.
That was 27 tablets a day. Like, oh, but I think turn it back to you because obviously with our disabilities, you're not just disabled. With that there comes implications with your personal life, with your mental health. What with yourself? Have you had to go into any medications or had any conditions because of your disability that stem from it?
With pain, yeah. So I do have mental health problems. I do have borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, as well as complex PTSD. And it's all stemming from being sick as a child and having
Mm-hmm.
disabilities and facing societal barriers because of that. Um, it all rolls into one. Now, you could say, oh, people with borderline personality disorder are born with it because it can be genetic, apparently,
Yeah.
but it is systemic from abuse. I've had a lot of people tell me that I don't have borderline personality disorder because you can't have that as well as autism, which I think is a disingenuous thing to say because no one really knows what's going on in the brain. Not even the greatest people on the planet will fully understand the brain. I certainly do have borderline personality disorder, and most of it is stemming from medical neglect and
Yeah.
negligence. Because if you constantly saying that you're in pain and the doctor's going, "Oh, just take a paracetamol. There's nothing wrong with you. We can't see anything wrong with you." You think you're going crazy, and then you
Mm-hmm.
start getting angry. I'm sorry if I'm
Yeah.
using words that people would consider ableist, but this is literally me verbatim saying what a doctor has said to me. Um, and you start thinking that you're losing your mind and
Yeah.
that you're wrong. And I was put on antipsychotics. I was put on Valiums. At one point with my pain, I was on a cocktail of cocodamol, paracetamol, cocodamol and paracetamol. Figure that one out. Tramadol, antipsychotics, amitriptyline, which is, I think, given to people with depression, sleeping
Mm-hmm.
tablets, and antihistamines. And it wrecked my liver, and I couldn't take them anymore. So although I'm on painkillers at the moment, this is a very, very rare occurrence that I'm on a course of pain medication, because my body
Yeah.
will start rejecting it and it will make me very unwell and I'll start having very bad side effects. And but this is the thing, because people are probably wondering, oh, why are you talking about your health when this is meant to be like a work podcast? Well, when you're disabled, it's all connected. All of it's connected. It's not just a working person and a disabled person. If you're a working disabled person, this is all connected. Because if you've ever been on high level of painkillers, try and think what you were like. And then try and think that I have to take those and work, because I don't have an option. And this week I've had to take the week off work, but if I'm going to have to continue with this medication, I'm going to have to work on pretty high opiates, and
Yeah.
that is not really a great way to go with things. And the problem is if I come off them too soon, then I'm going to be back at square one again. But I also can't work on a high level of painkillers because I'm doing myself a disservice and the people that I'm working for a disservice. And this is what you have to balance as a disabled person. Now, with yourself, with your eyesight, you get headaches, don't you? And like you said, you get back pain because you're
Yeah.
constantly leaning into the screen. Now, if you're taking painkillers for that, there will be times when you just zone out and you can't
Oh
possibly
yeah.
work, and then you feel guilty because you can't work to 100%, 200% sometimes that we give, and then you feel bad, and that impacts on your mental health, and it's this whole terrible cycle. And pain clinics keep going, "Oh, use mindfulness." Be nice to yourself. Have a break. Now, don't get me wrong, mindfulness does work, and we'll get into that in the next episode, but it's not the catch all. And
No.
there's this fear of giving people a right level of pain medication so that they can function, because doctors are so obsessed that you're going to get addicted, which I get.
Like I think like that whole addiction piece, it's funny because we're talking about my migraines, my back pain, and I think since I started AMS, my current role, I haven't actually had to go to them and get painkillers because they've been really great at getting me my adjustments, getting me assistive technology. They've been great. Whereas previous employers, they've been terrible,
Yeah.
and they promise you the moon and stars, and they give you a bigger, larger monitor and say, "Here, this is going to fix all your problems." But by the way, our systems, when you zoom in, they cut off everything off the page,
Yeah.
and you're going to use trackers, which is going to have hundreds of columns. Surprise! But for me, taking those tablets, like at least you dry mouth. Like I couldn't be sitting during screening calls. So a screening call for anybody listening is essentially a mini interview. It's where you're called by the recruitment company or the sourcer, like myself, and we'll take you through some just information, gathering your experience, looking at your CV, and of course your motivations for applying for the role. So I couldn't do that call when I'm off my face and tablets. My mouth, when I take, especially cocodamol, they go so dry. It goes so dry, and even my eyes. I think my eyes kind of act crazy when I'm on them because I'm so like trying to focus. It's almost puts more strain on my eyes, and then you have your heart going boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. It's and you have to get on with it. You can't just be like, oh no, I can't do this. I've done when I work through in call centers, I've done phone calls with customers as I'm sitting there just trying to work out, oh my god, how am I getting through this? My back's really sore, these painkillers, I'm scratching it, but I'm off my head on these
Yeah.
painkillers. And your employer doesn't care. Oh, you've got tablets, that should fix it. I was told by one employer, if you stop smoking, that's going to help your back.
Really?
No, love. Having a visual impairment is what's causing the problem, not because I like to go out the back and have a sneaky smoke. The one thing is probably stressing me, giving me that stress free moment I need in the day.
Yeah.
But I think how we relate this back to people maybe looking for work, would you say disclosing your disability and not necessarily saying, here's a full list of this is my disability, this is the appointments I need, but do you think that when you are, if you are somebody who has disclosed your disability, say to an employer, should you also be disclosing this information around your health? Do you think so?
I am in two minds about it, and I will be very honest about
Mhm.
that. With our company, yes, I have disclosed, and they were straight up going, Fuchsia, you will not come to work because we want you to be safe and we want you to rest and we want you to take full effect of those painkillers and make sure that you
Yeah.
are okay. Previously, when I have been on painkillers and I've disclosed it, I got bullied into believing that I was addicted to painkillers when I wasn't.
Oh wow.
Because obviously I'd have to take breaks every 4 hours to take these painkillers to
Yeah.
function, and they made me believe that I was being a drug addict, and that was awful. So it's so difficult, isn't it? Yeah, okay, I have to
Yeah.
readily admit that I'm a wheelchair user because otherwise sometimes I won't get into a building. But do I want to tell them that I'm on cocodamol at the highest level? Not necessarily, no. But if I don't and I have a medical emergency, then what happens? Because like you say, cocodamol can make your heart rate go up, and it can certainly make your blood pressure go up. And
Oh yeah.
if you've accidentally had too much caffeine or your pain spiked and maybe you've taken the codamol a little bit too early, technically then you've overdosed, and your heart rate goes up and you have a panic attack. What are you going to do? And it's so difficult. And because there's this culture of shaming people that need medication,
Yeah.
you don't want to say so, but at the end of the day, if you don't and you do have a medical emergency, it's going to be 10 times worse because then the ambulance service cannot give you the drugs that you need to help you, which was, for me, if my heart rate goes too high, a saline solution. Doesn't matter if
Yeah.
I'm, full bladder or not, they have to pump me full of fluids to get my heart rate down. And it's so difficult, isn't it? And this is the minefield that is recruitment when you're disabled, is what level of disclosure do you do? Now, I always believe it's up to you. There is no
Yeah.
right or wrong answer. It's how you feel comfortable. Obviously, if you're a type 1 diabetic, then please do disclose that you need to take your medication, because especially in America, there's horror stories, isn't there, where people have not been taking their insulin because they can't have breaks to have food, or they've been on pumps and the pumps malfunctioned and they can't say. Or there was even a horror story last week where someone had a pump on the table and it's actually attached through the body, these pumps, and the lecturer
Mhm.
ripped it out the body saying you can't have that on the desk, and they actually
I
ripped a medical device out of the
yeah.
person, and it's so disgusting. It really is. And I don't know where this comes from, apart from maybe people that don't use medical devices or
Yeah.
any form of medication just do not understand that quite a lot of times these are, you know in, incredibly important. I mean,
Mhm.
when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to have my asthma medication on the floor with me when I was working for Next. And at the time, my asthma wasn't under control like it is now. So I would have
Mm.
asthma attacks, and asthma attacks are deadly. People don't understand this. Asthma attacks will kill you. And I wasn't allowed my pump. And it I had a full blown asthma attack, as in I was gasping for breath and I could not breathe. And the employer was just like, "Oh, well, you just need to sit down and just take a couple of deep breaths." They just didn't understand what an asthma attack was. And I kept saying, "I need my pump. I need my inhaler," because that's all I could say. I need my pump.
Yeah.
And they went, "You've got your shoes on."
Not pubs. Pub.
Shoes.
That's crazy.
I went, "No, I need my inhaler." And because it was in my locker, they couldn't get to it. The ambulance service turned up. I went, "Why hasn't she been given her inhaler?" And the manager was like, "Well, she didn't tell us that she was asthmatic." Complete lie. I had. They were just trying to cover their
Mhm.
asses because
Of course.
they didn't want me to have my asthma medication on the floor with me. And it's just things like that that is so important. You know, you might need like an angina spray to stop having an angina attack, which is incredibly important, because if you have an angina attack, that could go to a full blown heart attack. But you need that spray, right? And it's just simple things like that. I mean, yeah, okay, I wouldn't recommend walking on the floor with a bag full of cocodamol, of course not, or walking into an office because that could be quite dangerous. But with disability and taking medication in the workplace, it's so incredibly important to have those open and honest conversations if you can, saying, look, I need this medication with me. I need it, even if I have to lock it into my drawer or have it on my person, in my pocket or a bag or something. I need this medication with me. I can't put it into a locker. This is life-saving. And we just need to, I don't know, somehow have those conversations.
I think I am in agreement with you as well. It is individual. Nobody can say, "Oh yeah, this is the best idea. This is the worst idea." I've told employers and I've not told employers. Do I wish I would have told the ones I hadn't, those who I hadn't told now? Yes, 100%. However, would their opinions or their kind of mindsets have shifted when I told them? Probably not, because even when I did start telling employers a few years later, they didn't do anything. I didn't really seem to care either. So I think when it comes to work, I think it is individual. But the case that you've kind of cited there, wasn't it a student? The teacher pulled it out, or it was a student,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it was in the news. I think it was in the Huffington
Yeah,
Post. Yeah, so a tutor
I
ripped it out of their body.
and their excuse was, I didn't know what this was, but it's start, and in the US as well, because the cost of insulin in the US is insane. So this was a couple of £1,000 worth of damage they done, which they weren't taking accountability for because they didn't know. But most people don't know we have disabilities until you speak to us. Just because you didn't know, is it okay to just push me out of the way, which I'm not going to say, or is it okay to just to take you and throw you to the side as well? You're not going to do that. So why is it okay to take somebody's device that just because you don't know what it is and rip it away? Whether you're a teacher or a parent or a colleague, ask.
Yeah.
Like it's almost the same as I think as somebody taking you in your wheelchair, just pushing you to the side, and that's happened to you.
Yeah, that has happened to me on multiple occasions. I mean, almost nearly every time I went out, it happens. People move me, touch me, say, "Oh, can I help you?" without me even saying no. They just immediately start pushing me. And where my fingers are in my wheelchair, you can break my fingers. And if you break my
Yeah.
fingers, how am I going to push myself? But people they just seem to think that they're doing good. And I'm just like, well, would you just automatically go and grab someone's legs because they're walking slowly uphill?
And no, of course they would, because they would get done for harassment. That could be taken as sexual harassment. I think if you physically have to put your hands on somebody else to move them, to whether it's hugs, okay, you can hug me, I'm okay with that. But if you're going to push somebody with a disability out of your way, that just makes you an absolute asshole. Let's just be real here, because what human decides, I'm going to use physical force to move you, but I'm helping you because you know what? I've taken that strain away from you having to push yourself or you having to do that extra bit of movement. No,
Yeah,
it doesn't work like that
it
there.
doesn't work. But I think which was like the whole point of this conversation was being disabled, whether in work or daily life, is you don't have autonomy over your own body. There's someone else always making the decision for you, whether it's medical or in work or personal. I mean, quite a lot of people are still under conservatorships in the world. Brittany being one, although she's no longer. And it's disabled people not having that choice of what's best for them, which is
Yeah,
the most shocking thing. I mean, having doctors deny me pain medication because it's addictive is wrong. It's
yeah.
totally wrong. I mean, when I need pain
Especially
medication, I need pain medication. End of story.
especially when not specialists. Like we have specialist doctors for. Like I have a specialist eye doctor who I would say about my disability. I'm sure you have specialist numerous doctors to discuss certain things with.
Yeah.
So why does a general GP who has no specialist training get to say we can't give you this because we don't know if you're going to get addicted? But you know what? We're going to disregard the fact that you've had it for years because you have a disability. We don't want you to get addicted to this new painkiller.
Yeah.
Mate, I've been taking that on his two stronger cousins for years to cover this pain. But I think we are coming close to time. So what I think maybe we should do is wrap up with our rant of the week. So for anyone who joined us for the first podcast, we have decided we are going to do an on what is this now? I struggle to say this because of the acronyms. We're going to try to say it.
Inclusive.
It's our
Inclusive.
an inclusive. Dis,
Inclusive. Inclusive rant of the week, and we've made that word up. Apparently, it's not a real word. So, inclusive rant of the week.
An inclusive rant of the week. There we go. I promise you, we did tell you there would be a few teething issues with this.
We're totally professional, honestly.
And work, get us between 9 to half 5, and we're definitely professional. After half 5, it's disability out and Fuchsia's about. So, Fuchsia, what is your rant of the week? Tell us what has been grinding your gears.
The pain medication. Doctors denying pain medication to people that are screaming in pain in A&E, going, I'm in pain, and a doctor going, oh, just breathe through it, love. I was like, for half the time I feel like saying, well, breathe through a punch in the face and see how you feel. Honestly. Don't tell me to
Please don't
breathe
punch a
through
doctor.
this. But that's my rant of the week. What about yours?
My rant of the week is going to be not something I've seen. It's something I've seen shared on Twitter, and it really got me frustrated and worked up. And that was somebody in England, so somebody in London had went to get this public bus, and there was a buggy. Now I may misquote this, and hopefully maybe one day we'll get this person in to speak and tell this story. But essentially, there was a buggy in this space on the bus where wheelchair users would be able to be accessible and be able to sit there. But what the bus driver did was tell this person that they believe in, like, they are equal, they treat everybody equal, but didn't move the buggy, even though the parent could have went and sat in a seat with a child, didn't move the buggy, told the person to get out of the bus and wait in the pouring rain. This person was upset and crying. And I read this and I was so angry. And somebody the week before told me that I shouldn't be an ableist and I should be more forgiving when it comes to things like this. 100% I'll forgive somebody, but the person needs educated first. I'm not going to forgive you unless you've educated yourself and know why you're sorry. Just don't tell us to forgive people because it's all the best thing to do. Yes, it's the right thing to do. Forgiveness is, but also the person needs to educate and know why they messed up. So to that person, I am so sorry you went through that, and I've went through similar instances. Fuchsia, you have,
Yeah.
and I've seen it everywhere on Twitter. After saying this one thing, it's everywhere. There's so many people experiencing this. So my rant is, society is not designed for the 1%. We need to fix that. And if we have to shout about it, don't tell us we're angry for shouting about it. We're
going to
doing
get
what we have to.
angry.
We're going to get angry. But for now, what we're going to do is, Fuchsia, do you want to say your goodbyes before we close off?
I will, and I love you all, and thank you so much for listening to our weird and wonderful podcast. I hope you join us on this journey because it's going to be amazing, and bear with us. If you want to skip a couple of episodes, please do. If it's not for you, obviously every episode is going to be titled and there will be a full description and transcript, so if you don't want to watch it, please read the transcript and let us know how you feel.
Please do. And don't forget to check out our Twitter at @thatinclusion, on our website, www.thatthingcalled'inclusion.com. If you do have any questions or if you want to be a guest and come join us on the show, please reach out to us on Twitter. And for me and Fuchsia, good night, enjoy, and goodbye.
Bye.
Blowing kisses and all.